Once again, half a day and welcome. This is the half a day, thank you. We have a very participatory audience this morning. This is a presidential forum. The University of Guam is proud to get together and organize a meeting of the minds, if you will, of various leaders of post-secondary institutions to find out where are we going and what is our role in this new economy and in this new time. So joining me on stage are Dr. Robert Underwood, President of the University of Guam, the Honorable Anthony Babauta, U.S. Department of Interior, Barry Bergman, United Airlines, and Mr. Ben Cruz from the Sheraton Guam Hotel and Resort. These gentlemen have all been instrumental in having today's event organized, and so Dr. Underwood, if you could please come up and explain to us what we're doing here today. Thank you.
Afaday. Okay, good morning, and on behalf of the University of Guam, welcome to the 60th Anniversary Presidential Forum. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that this prestigious event has been made possible by a number of partners, including the generosity of United Airlines and the cooperation of the Sheraton Laguna, and of course the Office of Insular Affairs, U.S. Department of Interior. This morning we have a very distinguished group of visitors who have taken the time off from their very hectic personal and professional schedules to help us navigate and think about and infuse with wisdom and broader perspectives the future of the University of Guam and the future of island societies in general and the economies and societies that we serve. It is tempting in the context of being a chief executive officer, a CEO, a president, you know, there's various titles for this role, a chancellor in some systems, a vice chancellor in the South Pacific, to think of you know, it's really lonely at the top and, you know, nobody understands the issues that we're confronting. But universities play a very unique role in the development of a society and in the development of an economy. And so we're very honored to have a variety of perspectives to be shared with the university community as well as the broader community of Guam. In conjunction with this, you know, we'll have, of course, Dr. John Sanchez. He failed to introduce himself. How about a round of applause for Dr. John Sanchez? And so we have with us a very distinguished panel of presenters, and Dr. Ricardo Fernandez, who will be speaking a little bit later on. He's president of Lehman College, City University of New York, and a former chair of the American Council on Education, which is the premier organization looking at higher education in the United States. So he offers us a very large perspective and kind of the trends that universities and colleges are undergoing in the context of American society, changing funding patterns, changing demands, changing administrative structures, changing governance systems. We have our own Mary Okada, who's our neighbor and of course president of the Guam Community College, and is here offering a perspective of the Pacific Post-Secondary Education Council, which is the council that enrolls most of the students that are in post-secondary education. The participants in the Pacific Post-Secondary Education enroll most of the students that are going to post-secondary education in the region. We have Don Straney, who is Chancellor of the University of Hilo, a sister education partner of ours, part of UOG's peer group institutions, and they make a very special effort to recruit Micronesians, so there's a fair amount of islander presence from outside Hawaii at UH Hilo. And we have Ray Bea, who is president of Mapua Institute of Technology in the Philippines, that has a School of Engineering that's Abbott accredited, and we signed a broad partnership with Mapua, and so we're very happy that he's here. And of course we have Dr. David Hall, who is president of the University of the Virgin Islands, our sister territory, and our sister university. You know, the way that we configured, or the way we thought about this was that what other institution experiences the kind of same funding patterns and pitfalls? Well, we find another territory that essentially has the same political relationship with the federal government, almost identical. And the only one that's the closest is not the CNMI, and it's certainly not the Compacts of Free Association. The closest to Guam in terms of its overall political relationship to the federal government and funding patterns is the Virgin Islands. So we're very interested in hearing those ideas. And we have Ganesh Chan, who is Vice Chancellor of Fiji National University, a new university. Of course, we're always mindful that we're part of the island Pacific, and so I think we will be refreshed to hear some of the perspectives that are emanating from our Pacific Island neighbors south of the equator. And lastly, we have Dr. Alfredo Pascual, who is president of the University of the Philippines. And I tried to figure out how to characterize it, because the University of Philippines is huge, you know. So how does all of this fit in? And so I thought, well, you know, in higher ed, we always like to talk about Tier 1 institutions, you know. Tier 1 institutions are like, you know, highfalutin research universities that offer, you know, PhDs and everything else. So I thought about it, and I said, you know, the University of the Philippines is the nearest Tier 1 university to Guam. It's in that sense. So, and of course, his perspective is going to be valuable as well. So there is a kind of a method to all of this madness, and we're very, very fortunate, because I think that the nature of the conversation today is going to guide a lot of thinking about what universities do in societies, what universities do in economies. So very happy that you're here with us. We're going to have a great conference. We're going to hear some great ideas, and of course, you're going to have some great questions. So you're going to have to pay attention, class. Thank you very much.
Our sponsors, at this time, I'd like to call upon the Honorable Anthony Babalta to give his welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and Minana Sidzuus. I say that because my daughter, who's vacationing along with me here in Guam, she's a little girl, stage left. Her name is Gabriella, and this is her second year attending the Chamorro Immersion Program down at Chamorro Village, the Harao Academy. And so we want to make sure that maybe everybody knows Minana Sidzuus, and they're all learning Chamorro along the way. It's certainly a pleasure for me to be here this morning and to be able to see everybody that has gathered here to be able to plan and be able to chart out a vision and a role of what the university means to a community, and in particular for this purpose, what the University of Guam will mean for this community, and how it fits and the role that it plays over a number of different challenges that it will face in the coming years. On my way over here to the conference, my daughter was asking me exactly what's going to happen here. Why are you speaking? Why are you taking time out of vacation to go speak, is what she said. And I said, of course, it was Mr. Underwood, the reason why we're here. But the larger thing that I tried to relate to her is I said, this is a time when all the adults are going to get into a room and figure out exactly what's going to happen with education. They're going to try to find out and come to a consensus of what is their vision for the community, for the island, and for students who are young like her, but will eventually become adults and assume leadership roles in companies, in businesses, in government, and as role models for other young children as they get older. So certainly, being able to support this endeavor by the University of Guam and being able to support the gathering of these very prestigious and influential leaders of their own universities, not only in this region but also from the Caribbean, is something that is in line with the strategic plan and our strategic goals of the Department of the Interior, and I would dare say for the federal government, which is to have strong government, a strong community, a strong backbone for the development of economies and and government and political status, as I know that we're going to speak about that later on this afternoon. It also is a testament to us wanting to see that good government happens and good government is occurring, and I'm glad to see that the public auditor Doris Brooks is here, because we are supporting in all the islands, either in the Caribbean or in the Pacific, a way to make government more transparent, so that not only the leaders of government know what's happening, but more importantly, the community knows exactly what is happening with their government. So again, it's a pleasure to be here this morning and be able to support this effort. I thank Robert Underwood for allowing us to be able to support this effort, and certainly thank you for being agreeable to be here and participate and to chart out a vision of what the university's role is in any developing community. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Babalta. From United Airlines, Mr. Barry Bergman.
Thank you very much. It's, I was noticing this is the first time I've been in a room with so many people associated with the university since I graduated many years ago. And the day I graduated, we were seated in order of how we had done the previous 4 years. I was not in the front like today, so it's pretty gratifying that I get to be in the front today. But Dr. Underwood, thank you very much for letting United be part of this. We have a strong partnership with the University of Guam and certainly with the educational professionals that are in the room today. We value our partnership with the University of Guam, and we have a lot that is alike. We're very similar because as the University of Guam calls Guam its home, so do we at United Airlines. And on the island, we have 1,100 of our coworkers here, one of the largest, if not the largest, private employer in Guam. And actually, many of my coworkers attended the University of Guam or are currently attending the University of Guam. And many got their start with United Airlines from intern programs, and several are in key management positions here on Guam and also throughout our system. But we have worked with the University of Guam with our endowment program, and we've been able to commit $100,000 in travel to support the university business. Thank you. So our purpose is to certainly support the business travel that the university has to do, but also to support having people come in and visit the university, for people from off-island, and also functions like this to help support specific functions, ad hoc functions, to bring speakers into forums like this. And the list of educators is long and diverse where they've come to participate with the University of Guam, kind of like our route system. Places like Japan, China, Fiji, FSM, Thailand, you get the idea, from all over the world. And just as United strives to be a world-class airline with a far-reaching and network, the University of Guam brings educators and guest speakers to support the most comprehensive educational programs in the Pacific. So we're proud to support the university with our travel endowment, but we're also proud to participate in other university programs and initiatives such as the Go Green Army and Charter Days. When people ask us why we do things like that, we understand that to thrive in the airline business, that we have to continue to learn, and we have to be able to adapt to change in the environment that we're in. And this is the same for the future leaders that come from the University of Guam. The strong education that you provide will teach graduates to adapt to the business world they'll face in the future. And certainly in your first 60 years, there's been a lot of changes. And I'm sure that you understand in the next 6 decades, there will be many, many more changes. And it's comforting to know that you've prepared the leaders of tomorrow to thrive when facing these changes. So again, thank you very much for making United Airlines part of your forum today. We appreciate the opportunity to support all the things that you do, and I wish you a successful forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And from the Sheraton Guam, Mr. Ben Cruz.
How do I follow great speakers like the two before me? How'day. Good morning and welcome, participants, university presidents, and chancellors from the Asian Pacific region and U.S. territory universities. Congratulations, University of Guam, on your 60th anniversary. The assembly and collaboration of university leaders to discuss the various challenges you face, which will ultimately affect our future island leaders, is an excellent move in the right direction. I speak from experience because recently I was tasked to work with a purchasing team from the 7 hotels of PHR KenCorp to develop a consolidated purchasing program. Though each of the managers in the hotels were accustomed to working independently, we were able to be successful in this program by working together and learning from one another, from each other's knowledge and experiences. So I think this is a great step in the right direction. Enjoy your sessions. Have a great day, and thank you very much.
President Underwood, members of the Board of Trustees of the University of Guam, fellow college presidents, distinguished guests, faculty, administrators, students, friends of UOG, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure for me to be back in Guam. Much certainly has changed since I was here some 30-some years ago, accompanying my good friend Dr. Samuel Betances as a teacher, as a consultant to the bilingual teacher training program at UOG. That program back then was headed by a young faculty member you all know. His name is Robert Underwood. To help commemorate the 60th anniversary of UOG, Dr. Underwood, now the 10th president of UOG, has called us together to reflect on the evolution of higher education over these past 60 years, and as much as possible to predict where it will be 6 decades from now. There's no better location, I was thinking of the University of Guam, than Manguilao, because as President Underwood is fond of pointing out, the word means they observe in the Chamorro language. In the next few minutes, I want to touch briefly on the remarkable growth of higher education, both in the United States and internationally, on the rapid changes that have taken place, and what the future may hold for us. In a recent book, best-selling author Anya Kamenetz tells us that around the world, we believe in the power of education to improve the human situation. To use her words, faith in the universal power of human learning is at the heart of modernity. In fact, she continues, this belief is the closest thing we have to a world religion, and it is winning converts at an unprecedented speed. At the beginning of the 20th century, she notes, about 500,000 people attended colleges and universities across the world. Now that sounds like a lot, but think that 100 years later, at the start of the 21st century, that figure had ballooned to 100 million people. And in the decade that followed, in the last decade, it jumped by a whopping 50% to more than 150 million today. The United States has accounted for a sizable portion of that growth. At the end of World War II, just under 1.7 million students were enrolled in U.S. colleges and universities. 30 years later, in 1975, that number of undergraduates had grown to 11.2 million. And a little more than 30 years after that, in 2010, it stood at 18.1 million. Now, 76% of this enrollment today is found within the vast and diversified system of public higher education in the United States, which includes both community colleges offering 2-year associate's degrees and senior colleges and universities offering bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. only 24% of U.S. students are enrolled in private colleges and universities. But some of the growth that we are experiencing is coming from a relatively new sector, those institutions that are not only private, but also for profit. The concept of making a profit in higher education is decidedly new, even in the United States, where profits have long been made in fields like healthcare that are traditionally part of the public sector in many countries. In the United States, the for-profit sector is growing dramatically. In 2010, those institutions had an enrollment of close to 2.5 million students, and that figure is more than double the numbers that they had 3 years before. And they account for 10% of current enrollment. There have been other important changes as well in higher education. Historically, institutions occupied a single campus in a fixed location, or in the case of a university system, and there were very few, several campuses scattered throughout a state. Some of us, like UOG and many state institutions, started out as teachers' colleges. Some were merged into larger state university systems, offering greater depth and diversity in its programs. These mergers can be transnational, too. The Arabian Gulf University, for instance, was founded in 1980 as a joint venture among 6, currently 7, Arab governments and the Gulf College of Hospitality and Tourism. Today, many institutions, both in the U.S. and abroad, have established branch campuses, expanding not only domestically, but also across borders. The latest figures from 2011 show that a total of 200 degree-granting institutions, international branch campuses. That's more than twice the number that existed only 5 years ago. And 37 additional campuses are expected to open in the next 2 years. Many other institutions offer courses at extension centers, at other locations, in their local communities, or as part of a consortium where particular courses are offered at one location for students registered in any of several institutions. So what else has changed? 60 years ago, college was invariably a full-time commitment that lasted 4 years. Part-time programs were few and far between, and generally offered only in the evenings. Now, at the community college level, and even in many of our senior colleges and universities, most students are balancing full-time work with part-time or even full-time study. And the average calculated time to earn a bachelor's degree in the United States has increased from 4 years to 6 years or more. Classes run from early morning through late at night and on weekends. Higher education now goes round the clock, 24/7. But perhaps even more striking, if we go back a few decades, most of our students then were men. And going back even further, with notable exceptions, they were men of privilege. In the United States, the GI Bill changed those demographics, bringing into our classroom men from lower and middle class homes whose service in the military gave them the opportunity their parents could only dream about, a college education. Women were soon to follow, and in fact, at many of our colleges, they form the majority of our students today. At my own institution, for example, 69% of our undergraduates are women. Over the last 2 decades, the faces of our students, the primary language they speak, the regions in our countries they represent, have also changed. Moreover, as globalism has spurred international exchange in education, we have welcomed both students and faculty from many different lands, enriching our student body and our programs. Institutionally, we have reached out as well. At Lehman, we're very pleased a number of years ago to begin a partnership in nursing with Sungshin Women's University of South Korea. And we're also proud of collaboration efforts of our biology faculty with Minzu University in China. Hanging over all of us through most of the last decades has been the dollar sign. As presidents, we continue to face financial challenges. In the U.S., support from public sources has decreased while the costs have continued to increase. At the University of Virginia, for example, a prestigious research institution, one of the oldest public universities in the United States, the reduction has been dramatic. State funding has declined 22% since 2008. And now it accounts for less than 6% of UVA's total budget. And the story is not limited to Virginia, unfortunately. Across the United States, total funding for higher education has dropped by 15% since 2008. And in some states, like California, the cuts have exceeded much more. More and more, we are turning to our alumni and other sources of charitable giving to help make up that difference. But philanthropy has not closed the gap entirely, so we are finding other alternatives. Faced with no way of funding new construction projects and repairs to its infrastructure, I'll give you one example. The Ohio State University, which has a strong connection with the University of Guam, recently issued $500 million in bonds. The term date of those bonds is not 10, 20, or even 30 years from now, but a staggering 100 years. Okay? I think this is the first. In other words, they will not mature for a century, all the while paying 4.8% interest. Ohio State, by the way, is also looking to privatize parking operations and expects to reap close to $500 million for a long-term lease of its 17,000 parking spaces on campus. And I can assure you, parking is going to go up at Ohio State. Rather than turning to investors, most institutions have had no option but to rely instead on their customers for the added revenue. Thus, we have witnessed steady increases in tuition as enrollments keep rising and governments keep cutting back. The financial impact on students has been dramatic. Years ago, students could count on Pell Grants, the basic education opportunity grants, to pay for as much as 80% of their tuition at a public college. The other 20% would come from other sources, personal investments or even small loans. Today, those figures are reversed. Pell Grants now pay for only a fraction of the tuition bill at many public universities. And a combination of loans, savings, and other sources, and work, usually, cover all other expenses of attendance. In fact, in the United States, the debt that students have taken on to pay for college has reached a critical point. Experts say that the total figure hovers around $1 trillion, and they warn that this may be the next financial bubble to burst. More and more, the question is being asked whether, in fact, a college degree is worth this high cost, particularly in our difficult economic period, when well-paying jobs are scarce for new graduates. But perhaps the greatest change in higher education, however, has been caused by the digital revolution. In the old days, our students came to us either living in our dorms or commuting by local transportation. Now, sometimes we don't see our students much at all, depending on the number of courses we offer online, rather than in the classroom. At my institution, for example, 14% of all our courses are taught online, either fully online or in a hybrid format combination. In the for-profit sector, the University of Phoenix was way ahead of the rest of us and started online programs in 1989. It now enrolls more than 380,000 students in undergraduate and graduate programs. Back about the time that the University of Guam was established in the early 1950s, children read a cartoon strip. I remember reading about Dick Tracy, who used a high-tech watch to communicate. You could see the little rays coming out. Some of you may remember that. Some of you are too young to remember that. But little did we know then that these two-way wristwatches would one day morph into our cell phones that we slip into our pockets, and think of and how much more we were able to do with them that Dick Tracy could ever do. Think about the rapidity of this revolution. It took 5 years for the first billion cell phones to be sold. It took about 1,400 days for the second billion, and just 1,000 days for the third billion. Soon, there will be about 6 billion cell phones around the world, and that figure is growing up exponentially. I remember when my first computer was something called a Commodore 64. 64 kilobytes. I remember bytes and then kilobytes and then megabytes and then gigabytes. Now we're talking about petabytes and exabytes and yottabytes. Amazing, 2 disk drives. You had to load the program. It couldn't hold the program, and also you had to save on a separate disk. Think of that, and that was not that long ago. How is this revolution in technology changing higher education? Well, national borders are no longer barriers to instruction, and distance education is becoming increasingly common and increasingly global. Studies show that in 1995, less than 1% of the world population had internet access. By 2010, almost 30% was using the web. And by 2030, it's estimated that more than half of the world population will be online in some way or other. Bandwidth is always an issue, but even that is becoming as common. And I would say everyone predicts now that just like we assume electricity and water, when you go into a house, you're going to see internet access. That's going to be as common as that. So if you're thinking of investing a lot of money into infrastructure of internet, think again and think of what that means for you. Students who previously had limited access to education are finding that advanced knowledge is as close as their iPad. Think about this. Soon, the students we teach will have used the internet, cell phones, and tablets from the youngest of ages. They will be way ahead of many of our faculty in their level of comfort with new technology. And they will expect their college and university to keep pace with the advances created in the marketplace. Although the investment in technology we make at our institutions will continue to be substantial, the potential benefits are also significant. Not only can we reach more students, we may also expand our revenue opportunities and cut down on that mountain of student debt. And the possibilities, when you look at this, are really amazing. Consider Professor Andrew Ng, a computer science professor at Stanford University. He is offering his online course for free. And he has thousands of students around the world enrolled, taking this course, even though they don't get credit from Stanford, at least not yet. New York Times columnist David Brooks tells us of a joint collaboration between Harvard and MIT to offer free online courses from both universities in various fields. A new platform, EDX, developed through a major investment of both universities, $15 million each university, $30 million to develop this platform. It's described as an open source online learning platform that will feature teaching designed specifically for the web. The platform will serve as a laboratory in which data will be gathered to better understand how students learn, all in an effort, both institutions say, to improve education on their own campuses and around the world. Both Professor Ng's course and the ED platform are part of what is being called MOOC, M-O-O-C, a new acronym for us to learn. MOOC. This refers to a network of massively open online courses. A pathway will need to be created for students to turn the learning associated with these courses that carry no credit. In other words, these are free courses available on the internet. MIT has been doing this for years. They have the entire course schedule online, free, available to anybody. Of course, you don't get credit from MIT. You don't get a diploma from MIT, but you can access that. And a number of institutions are continuing to do this, and more will do that. So the trick here now is how to make sure that people who take these courses for no credit, how they can convert them into a certificate, or maybe even a degree. According to a senior executive at a subsidiary of CALE, the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, the infrastructure is already in place to do this, and it's just a matter of time before it happens. So think of it. Students, wherever they are, would prepare a portfolio of prior learning in a certain discipline from various MOOCs on the internet that they have completed, and they would submit it to an accrediting association like CALE, just as students now do to earn credit for knowledge and skills acquired through life or work experience. The assessment process would focus not on how or where the knowledge was obtained, but on what students can demonstrate that they have learned. So, given all this, what does all this change? What does it hold for the future of our institutions? Well, let me just say that crystal balls were never a reliable method of predicting the future, and I think they're even murkier these days, more difficult to read. But let me advance the following ideas. First, the rate of change will continue unabated. But those institutions that can take advantage of these opportunities for innovation will prosper. The need for a college-educated population will become greater than ever. The Center on Education and the Workforce at Georgetown University projects that by 2018, 6 years from now, the United States will need 22 million new workers with college degrees, either 2-year or 4-year degrees. But at current graduation rates, we will fall short of that number by at least 3 million degrees. For public higher education to reduce governmental support, the trend to reduce governmental support is clear and will continue into the foreseeable future. Pressure will remain constant for all of us who are presidents of universities to become more efficient, to reduce our operating costs, and to limit tuition increases through the use of innovation, mostly through technology. Many states are now considering performance-based funding for universities that would reward institutions on the basis of how many students they graduate, not on how many they enroll. If Anya Kamenetz is correct, as students are able to benefit from open platforms on the internet like edX, higher education could become, at least for some of the world's population, and she has a book on this, a do-it-yourself university. As I mentioned earlier, students would assemble electronic portfolios in their educational journey, and a new way will emerge to evaluate and validate what they have learned. Instead of receiving a diploma based on the standard 100 or 128 credits, students would present a portfolio with a variety of courses, creative works, certificates issued by colleges and universities and employers. And by the way, the Center for Education on Education and the Workforce at Georgetown has just issued a new report saying that the fastest growing credential in higher education is the certificate, more so than any other credential. They have a great website. You can Google it, and I think you will find it a lot of very important work being done. The quality of the programs that these students would submit would be judged by the knowledge and skills graduates can demonstrate via exams or other outcome-based learning assessments, not by the number of courses they take or the grades they earn or even the reputation of the university in which they earn them. In fact, it may not be a university at all. Apple's iTunes University, yeah, iTunes University, I don't know if you've looked at it. They already offer lots of complete courses via the iPhone. Students download a free app and they create a course they take audio, video, charts, text, images in ways that were unimaginable even a few years ago. The process of accrediting higher education providers will also change with the debate on how to give a seal of approval to the institutions and organizations issuing these certificates of achievement. There is no doubt that we're entering into a post-traditional age of higher education. And regardless of the outcome of the accreditation debate, I would argue that the role of universities, some say the monopoly that we have had on validating acquired learning, will change, and probably drastically. Many smaller private colleges will not survive, I think, this massive overhaul of the certification function of higher education. The role of philanthropy in public higher education sector will also expand, as will the competition from the for-profit sector. As globalization continues, so too will the reach of universities and the movement of students across countries and continents in search of education, skills, and jobs. Just as we have multinational corporations, we will have multinational universities. Take, for example, Monash University. In a recent chronicle, there was an insert in which they described Monash, the largest university in Australia. It has over 60,000 students, not only at 6 campuses at home, but also at its international campuses in Malaysia and South Africa. Its education and research center in Italy, its joint research academy in Mumbai, its joint research graduate school in Southeast China. Most universities expanding abroad will choose partnerships and joint ventures, such as the new campus being built in New York City by Cornell University and the Technion, a very well-known technical school in Israel. Made possible, by the way, through the donation of the land by New York City Mayor Bloomberg and the City Council, and a Cornell alum that donated $350 million to launch this new graduate school that's going to emphasize only graduate degrees in information technologies, computer science. They want to turn New York City into a real competitor to Silicon Valley, and this gives it a real boost. But there's other examples, such as the Technology and Design School at MIT and the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania joining with the National University of Singapore. This all reminds me of Aldous Huxley's words taken from The Tempest of the, quote, brave new world, unquote, that we are entering into in higher education. Momentous changes have already taken place in a very few short years, and the prospect is for more change at even faster pace in all areas. The relative isolation of institutions will be replaced by commonplace interactions among students, faculty, administrators around the world. Technology will be at the center of this revolution in teaching and learning. The role of public universities in preparing the workforce will grow in response to the needs of the cities, states, regions, and nations they serve, even if government support continues to be eroded. And our role in the preparation of educated citizens to be active participants in our societies will remain undiminished. Let me close by sharing with you a quote reported this May in the New York Times. Prominently displayed in the office of E. Gordon Gee, he's the president of Ohio State University, is a plaque, big plaque. And it reads, "If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less." Let me close also by saying that I don't know if it was by serendipity or not, but I learned that today, in addition to being the date of this seminar, this conference, is also the anniversary. It's a very important date in higher education and in history of the United States. On July 2nd, 1862, 150 years ago, President Abraham Lincoln signed into law the Morrill Act, named after Justin Morrill, a legislator from the state of Vermont. Consider what was going on at that time. You talk about our society and Congress being divided today. In 1862, we had a hopelessly divided country. In fact, we were so divided, we were killing one another. We were in the middle of the Civil War. Tremendous economic pressures, and really a need for more educated workers at a time when only the privileged could go to college. The need for change was recognized by Mr. Lincoln and Congress when they created the Morrill Act that set aside 30,000 acres and provided that land to the state so they could use it in turn to develop universities that would train new workers needed for a growing society in the mechanical arts, in the agricultural arts and mechanical arts. And a lot of 70 universities emerged over the years out of the Morrill Act. Think of all the A&M universities, the land-grant colleges and universities. Some of the most illustrious universities in the world are land-grant universities. So it is, I think, very fitting for us to be here today talking about the role of land-grant colleges, the role of higher education, the future of higher education in the world as it changes. So I look forward to the discussions, learning from my colleagues, and I hope I have planted a few seeds of doubt and maybe interest in learning more about the future of higher education. Thank you very much for your attention this morning.
Mr. Fernandez, thank you for opening our eyes and setting the stage for this morning's discussions.